Hello, my favorite students. This is your favorite teacher, Mr. Jacobson. I'm excited to be with you. Oh boy, we have completed our long and exciting journey in the world of ancient Egypt. And now we're just going to hike up north just a tad and we're going to talk about the early Hebrews, or as they're also called, the Israelites. So, if you've ever been familiar with the Bible, either the Jewish or the Christian Bible, you probably have heard of these people, since these are the ones who sort of bring monotheism, which is the idea of only one God, worshiping only one God, to the forefront in history. So let's begin. So, who were the Israelites? The earliest Israelites were herders and traders. According to the Hebrew Bible, they came from Mesopotamia and settled in a place called Canaan. Now, the Israelite religion focused only on one God. The belief in one God is called monotheism. The Israelite faith became the religion known today as Judaism. The followers of Judaism were eventually known as Jews. Judaism influenced Christianity and Islam and also helped shape the beliefs and practices of societies in Europe and America. So, Judaism and the Israelites, they played a very strong part in the way Western culture works today. So, we're going to talk about a man. His name's Abraham. The Israelites believed that they were descendants from a man named Abraham. The Bible says that God told Abraham and his followers to leave Mesopotamia and go to Canaan. There, they were to worship the one true God. In return, God promised that Canaan would belong to Abraham and his descendants. So, just to recap, uh, if you remember, Mesopotamia is right here. Here's the two rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates. So Abraham lived in what we call the city of Ur, which was a city-state. And eventually he grows up, and it's by tradition it's said that God came to him and told him that he and his family needed to leave and they needed to travel so they could be free to worship God without anybody's other ideas mingling with God's ideas. So, this is the route which he travels. Notice the river he follows, mostly the Euphrates here. He comes up and over, and these are the different empires of the time where their boundaries were. And he comes down and he settles right in here, which is the land of Canaan, or also known as Israel today. And also, the Egyptians had control of that area during that time. This is somewhere around 2000 BC, if any of you are curious. So Abraham lives there with his descendants, and eventually they go to Egypt because there's a famine. His descendants go to Egypt, and they stay in Egypt, and according to the Bible, they get enslaved. And then that eventually brought a man by the name of Moses to the forefront. So Moses was born in Egypt, and God told him to lead the Hebrews out of Egypt. So Moses led his people on a journey called the Exodus. Exodus means to go out of. So the Israelites escaped from Egyptian slavery. Jews today celebrate a holy day called Passover to remember this event. The Hebrews believed that God had set them free from slavery in Egypt. Now, when I say that the Israelites escaped from slavery, and I say they just sort of left Egypt, according to the story, it wasn't that simple. Pharaoh wasn't very happy. He let them go, and then he changed his mind. Anyway, so then they come to attack the Israelites, and the story goes that Moses, as you can see right here, he, by the power of God, he parts the Red Sea, and all the Israelites walk through the Red Sea, and they go on to the other side, and the Egyptians that were the army trying to attack them, they got swallowed up and washed up in the water. So here's another picture of of Moses parting the Red Sea. It's a pretty famous story. I should say, is a very famous story in the history of the world for many religions. Okay, so the Hebrew Bible says that during his journey, Moses went up to the top of a mountain. So after the Israelites are safe on the other side, eventually Moses is commanded to go up to the top of Mount Sinai. There he received laws from God. These laws are known as the Torah. They later became the first part of the Hebrew Bible. The Torah described a covenant or agreement with God in which God promised to return the Israelites to Canaan if they follow his laws. The Torah explained that God considered to be right. They explain what God considered to be right and wrong. One important part of the Torah is the Ten Commandments. So here's the Ten Commandments. The Ten Commandments help shape the basic moral laws of many nations, not just Israelites, but because Western society draws heavily from the Bible. A lot of Western laws and ideas come from the ideas of the Bible, which come from Israel. So the Ten Commandments told people not to steal, murder, or tell lies about others. They told people to avoid jealousy and to honor their parents. The Ten Commandments also helped develop a belief that laws should apply to everyone equally. So here's the Ten Commandments. You can have a chance to look at them if you like. We'll talk a little bit more about them later. So the Hebrew people became known as the Israelites. They lived in small communities. Each community selected judges as leaders to enforce laws and settle disputes. Eventually, Israel was ruled by a king. So at first, the Bible says God wanted them to live in little small communities, and each community had a judge. And that judge would be in charge of that community. And it's understood that God wanted that because he didn't want the people to have one leader who could be wicked or just mean or doesn't have the best interest of his or her people in mind. So that's the issue, that God wanted them to have judges instead of kings, but eventually the Israelites had a king anyway. So women in Hebrew society, women in society were dominated by men. A woman could inherit property if she had no brothers. Some were political and military leaders. The story of Ruth and Naomi is a model devotion to one's family. So women had a place in Hebrew society. It was very much a patriarchal society, which means the man is in charge. But there were rights that women could have, and one was, they could inherit property. Some were even political military leaders like Deborah. And we're going to just jump up north real quick. So the Phoenicians lived lived to the north of the Israelites, far north. They were skilled sailors and traders. Through trade, the Phoenicians spread ideas and goods. One of their most important ideas was an alphabet, or a group of letters that stood for sounds. The letters could be used to spell out the words of their language. The alphabet made writing simpler and helped people keep records. The Phoenicians brought the idea of an alphabet to the Greeks, who passed it on to the Romans. So here we have David. David becomes the first king of Israel. I shouldn't say the first king, the second king. The first king was Saul. And he's considered to be the greatest king of all the Israelites. He grew up as a shepherd and became the king of Israel. Famous for slaying Goliath. You see this big guy right here. The story goes that he is a little tiny teenager, I imagine. He slew this giant beast with a sling. United the whole country and expanded borders of Israel through conquering his enemies. He established the city of Jerusalem. So here is the kingdom of Israel under David. Okay, and so it's as big as it will ever be. It will never be this big again under David. And then after David, he had a king. His name was Solomon. And Solomon became the leader after David died. Like his father, he was a strong king, made allies with Egypt and Phoenicia, built the temple at Jerusalem, aka Solomon's temple, as you see right here. In the Hebrew Bible, Solomon was known for his wise sayings, or proverbs, as they like to call them. Solomon taxed the people by paying for his great buildings. So here's another replica of Solomon's temple. It was said to be one of the most amazing of its kind. It was beautiful. It was supposed to be the crown of Jerusalem, and unfortunately, it will be destroyed. When Solomon died, the northerners rebelled, and fighting broke out. 10 of the 12 tribes set up their own nation in the north. It was called the Kingdom of Israel, and its capital was Samaria. In the south, the other two tribes founded the smaller kingdoms of Judah. Its capital was Jerusalem, and its people were called Jews. So here is now, Israel is now divided. You have Israel, and then you have the kingdom of Israel up north, and the kingdom of Judah. And so they are not the same. Under David, it was united and strong, and now they have divided. The end of Israel and Judah. Israel will eventually be conquered by the Assyrians in 722 BC. You remember how nice the Assyrians were, right? And so they're going to get scattered throughout the Assyrian Empire. And then Judah will be conquered by the Chaldeans in here. And the Chaldeans weren't much nicer than the Assyrians. Of course, they copied the Assyrians and their deportation methods. So here they scattered Israel, and all the 10 tribes that were in Israel, they got scattered. We still don't know what happened to them. I'll let you go ahead and read up a little bit on that. Here's a picture showing the people being carried captive. And then Nebuchadnezzar ordered the Chaldeans to capture Jerusalem and destroy Solomon's temple. This is much later, remember. First to get conquered is the northern, and then let's see here, nearly about 150 years later, the southern part, Judah, will be conquered. So first Israel's conquered, then Judah's conquered, and they all get deported to Babylon, where Nebuchadnezzar is, and the Jews were slaves for about 50 years. So here you have the captivity of Judah. Once Jerusalem was conquered by Nebuchadnezzar, they are captured and they're taken all the way back to Babylon here, where many of them will live, and many people won't even know what Jerusalem, growing up in captivity in Babylon. So the Persians defeat the Chaldeans eventually, and they allow the Jews to, and it's said that Cyrus the Great, who defeated who was the Persian king, who defeated the Chaldeans, he allowed the Jews to go back home and to build their temple. He even gave them some money to build their temple. Some Jews went home and some stayed in the Persian Empire. Not everybody felt a connection to Jerusalem anymore. It was 50 years later. So someone said, no, this is my home. Babylon is my home. I'm staying here. Eventually, the Romans ruled the Jews and taxed them really hard. Romans did not respect their religion. Some rulers tried to force Jews to worship the Roman emperor, and so that's where we're going to leave off with the Israelites. So we went from their beginnings to being judges, to being kings, to being scattered, and to being under control of the Romans. So go ahead and write your one-page summary. And I know there's a lot to take in, and I look forward to discussing with you at the first of the week. Okay, bye-bye.